Okay, so the next one we're going to start to look at as far as just tools, and once again, these are just thinking tools to help guide your decision making, is the Boston Consultant Group Index, or matrix rather. Now the point of the BCG matrix is, well, the Boston Consulting Group is once again a large management consulting group that is a worldwide organisation. And some time ago, back in about 1968, they came up with a bit of a way to start to think about, well, where do we want to put our money as a company? If we're going to start putting our marketing efforts and our investments into these companies, where does that effort need to go to? And how do we start to juggle our list of products and services to best effect to obviously maximise our profitability? Okay, so it's really starting to talk about a growth share matrix, and it's just, as I say, it's just yet another decision-making tool. And the way they divide this thing up is they start to think about what's your market share look like, and also how your product's going as well there. So what we've got is we've got basically a bunch of different considerations. You have your stars. Now the idea behind a star is your product that's doing well, selling well, seems to be operating quite okay. And what we want to do is, think about, well, this is obviously, it could be a new product, whatever it happens to be, but that's our star product, okay? It's the one that makes us, it's making us money right now. Everything's going fairly well. You've got down here, the opposite of the star is the dog. That's a product that's maybe dying off. People aren't as interested in it anymore. Sales are declining. It's not really doing what we need. And we start to think about, well, what do we want to do with those products, okay? So as we do our product review, we identify the ones that are on their way out and start thinking about that there. Now, on the other hand, we have a cash cow. Now, a cash cow is your regular product that you might have, which has just been merrily churning profit for you for ages. Okay, people are using it on an ongoing basis. It's the Coca-Cola of products. It just sits there making money day in, day out. It's not doing anything spectacular. It's not experiencing massive growth. It's not doing anything funky. It's just returning a regular return for you on an ongoing basis. And up here, you have your question marks. And what we're talking about question marks is they're the ones you're really not so sure about. Okay, they're the products that you've got on your books. You need to start making some decisions. You're not really entirely sure where they fit in this, and you might need to start thinking about, well, what do we need to engage and what do we need to divest? If we've got a dog, the tip there is we liquidate. Okay, so our dogs we just get rid of. We just get rid of as quickly as possible and as painlessly as possible because we don't want to keep operating with them anymore. Our question mark products, well, we need to start to think about, well, how do we want to refine them? We've got two options. Either we start to invest in them and select those to try and turn them into stars and put a bit of money into them or whatever it happens to be and start to pull them out of there, or we start to think about getting rid of them once again and just divesting them. It's obviously not as important as getting rid of a dog because they're not actually costing us so far, but they're not really doing anything particular. Okay, and we want to get our offerings down to a point where we're not wasting money, resources and time. Now, when we look at our stars, obviously we want to turn our stars into cash cows. Okay, we want to have our stars consistently selling, consistently developed. So what we need to do then is to start to think about, well, how can we push the star product? How can we maintain its longevity? And then turn it into one of our regular ongoing cash cows. And that may require an investment of funds to help us do that and to help bring it along. Okay, so the considerations here is we start to think about, when we're looking at these products, we start to think about what's their relative position in a market. Okay, and that's what's going to really help tip our considerations. When we talk about relative position, what we're talking about is the percentage of the total market that's being serviced by my company. Okay, so how much of the market are we servicing? All right. Do we have 4 other competitors? Are we doing 25% of that market, or what is the number we're looking at there? And we can look at that in terms of revenue, so as far as finances, or we can start to look about unit volume, so how many sales get made. Okay, so as I say, dollars, how much profit or how many dollars are generated, or how many units are sold. We can look at that 2 different ways. The higher the market share that we have, obviously the higher percentage of that market we control. Okay, so the idea is, what we're trying to do is push ourselves into a position where we have a high market share, and the notion is that if we've got a pretty good market share and we're selling a fair bit of dollars and we're selling a fair bit of units and that market's healthy, we should actually be enjoying a healthy return for our company. All right, if your market's small and you don't really own it, well, you can't really do much and it's probably not going to help. So think about that. Now, when we talk about the business growth rate, what we're trying to do there is, we're looking for markets that are enjoying an expansion or that, it's a lot easier for our business to get involved in an expanding or growing market than a market that might be oversaturated or dying off. Okay, so in a low growth market, the competition's often bitter. There's a lot of people fighting each other. rather than trying to invest in new customers or invest in educating new customers, what you find is you're spending your entire time fighting off competitors for those very same slice of pie. Okay, and what happens is it's very hard to retain market share in those slow growth markets because one of the only real strategies that you can get involved in, or one that is, becomes very popular, is just price cutting. And what happens is in those low growth areas, that just ends up a race to the bottom. Okay, so what we're really aiming for in a Boston Consultant Group's matrix is looking for a fast moving or growth market that we can get into, develop a fairly good market share and continue to be profitable. And what we're trying to move away from is the low growth, slow products and slow markets that are just going to end up in us having to fight competitors all day. And that's really not where we want to be. Now, what will also start to change that is the private and public perceptions or actions to regulate a market. And, consumerism and capitalism start to come into there a little bit, and they're the movements that are going to start to drive that. Okay, so we think about when those things start to create problems for us is when you start to see different things happening in the community, like thinking about your steep analysis. But you start to look at, if problems occur, these things slow down. And the problems that might occur are things like, if there's a public perception, corporate salaries are often a big one that triggers that. We see a lot about, top CEOs making large amounts of money. All of a sudden, there's a lot of focus on that industry. Or if all of a sudden people are making disproportionate profits, that can all of a sudden slow an industry and get people involved or starting to look at it very hard. So that can be a bit of a concern there. And also, you can get things like if fraud starts to take place. I know in the financial markets in Australia for a while, everything was grow, everything was go. They were doing very well, and then it started to come out about not only corporate salaries were way too high, or perception of them being too high, but also there was a lot of fraud and those sort of things went on, and a lot of people got bad advice, lost money. All of a sudden there was a lot of regulations brought in there to start to control that. All right, same, environmental concerns. Here's a good one, typical would be palm oil. Obviously we had all these products going around, all these companies moved to palm oil to save dollars. Everything grew along famously, and then all of a sudden they realized the environmental damage that was being done, and then there's a consumer backlash against palm products, and that started to shape things there as well. Okay, so when you're looking at this and you're looking at growth, you do need to be aware of what's happening in the world around you. Make sure you're doing your steep analysis to help support this, so you know what the factors are that could come to bite all of a sudden, and then start thinking about where do I want to invest my money and what are the products that are going to help me achieve my goal once you've made those considerations. Okay, so once again, this is a tool. It is a good tool to start to just shape some of the thinking and get some discussion going around it. Okay, it's not an exact science, it's there as a guide, and it's a guide to be used in conjunction with the other sort of tools and thoughts that you have, okay? And to hopefully get some good conversation going and some good analysis of your product offerings, which will allow you to start to develop some good strategies to go out there and come up with some good plans. All right, so that's just a brief overview of the BCG matrix. It is fairly simple. It can become really complicated if you want it to, but if you're overcomplicating it, you're probably taking it too far. All right, good luck out there.